Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming. Welcome to all of you, and a big thanks to Watkins for having me here tonight, and to Watkins Publishing, who have been extremely supportive with the reissue of my book, Everyday Kundalini, and I'm super excited that it's been reissued under the new title, Everyday Kundalini. And I'm going to talk a little bit about it tonight, and there'll be a chance at the end to ask any questions that you might have about Kundalini, and I'll explain a little bit about my journey into Kundalini and what prompted me to write this book. So Kundalini Yoga came into my life in 1999. I was performing a lot around Europe, and I was searching for something that was going to give me more connectedness, more groundedness, and more peace, more inner peace. And I was visiting an acupuncturist in London who arrived at the door with a white turban and a white outfit, and I just went with it. I thought, oh, that's obviously his uniform, not knowing that actually he was a Kundalini yoga teacher. And I saw this acupuncturist on and off for about a year, and he mentioned the name Kundalini to me a couple of times. However, it wasn't until a year later that I was inspired to go on a yatra, a spiritual journey, to Yucatan Peninsula, Mexico, with him and a group of about 12 people. I was a little hesitant about going because I said to him, look, I've never done Kundalini and I don't know really what it is. But I was open to a new experience, and actually that experience profoundly changed my life. I experienced meditation and yoga before, mainly hatha and some transcendental meditation, and also other yoga practices like Ashtanga. But I'd never quite experienced something like Kundalini. And there I was with this group of people. I remember it vividly to this day, sitting cross-legged with my hands up in the air and doing this very potent breath called breath of fire. And we did this meditation beyond 11 minutes. I think it was for 31 minutes. And I remember thinking at the time, how am I going to go through this? But something shifted within me, and my mind suddenly went to another level of awareness, and my whole body experienced an energy that it had never experienced before, and I felt this profound sense of inner peace. And the only way I can really describe it really is like a rebirthing. And when you do awaken Kundalini, it can sometimes have this effect where you feel this incredibly deep inner transformation and a sense of inner calm, inner peace, and a new connectedness to the self. And so now if I look back on that experience, it definitely was a Kundalini awakening, and I feel very blessed that I had that with my first introduction to Kundalini, and not everyone has that. But obviously I was ready and I was open to it, and that's why that occurred. So I was so fascinated by Kundalini, the science behind it, and how not only did I feel this effect within my body, but I also felt it very much within my mind. And that's what I found was missing in a lot of the yoga meditation practices that I'd been doing. The fact that I experienced those changes, profound and subtle, in a relatively short period of time. And I think because we live now in such a fast-paced world, there's so many things now that we have to juggle. We've got work, we've got, family, we've got busy lives, we're bombarded by technology, so much information, so many choices, so many distractions. Kundalini is a tool for this modern day world. I truly believe it is, because the toolbox is so vast, and it's also so prescriptive. So really you can use these tools in a very conscious and proactive way to help shift things within you, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. So fast track to now, after that experience in Yucatan in Mexico, I then signed up on a teacher training course. Not to become a teacher, it was really to gain some more insight into the science behind it, the technology, how it worked, how the kriyas, the components of Kundalini came together, and how they affected the body, the mind, and how you could integrate them relatively easy into your everyday life. It was a very transformative experience, because it was 1 weekend a month, which was quite doable, and then you had the opportunity to go back to your life and integrate that into your daily life. You were given like homework with meditations and exercises, and to diarize that and the effects they had on you. And so I felt that that was a wonderful way of making the tools fit into the real world. And that's what Kundalini Yoga is about. It's called the Householder's Yoga. Yogi Bhajan, who brought the teachings to the West in '69, called it the Householder's Yoga, because it is for people who are interactive in a busy life. They're juggling a lot of things, and people who are time poor and who want something that's easily fitted into their daily schedule. So after the teacher training, I was asked by the acupuncturist to teach a lot of his classes, and I continued to do a lot of singing, performing, and I had a lot of musicians and actors, a lot of creative people ask me to teach them Kundalini, and that is really why I ended up on the teaching path of Kundalini, because I felt that it was kind of the natural calling from there on. And I've seen it change people's lives in such positive ways, and it also changed mine in many, many positive ways. And there are lots of benefits. So what is Kundalini? Kundalini is a Sanskrit word, and part of that word is derived from a Sanskrit word meaning coiled or circular, coiled up or circular. And some of you may have heard that it's sometimes referred to as the serpent energy. We don't have a serpent lying at the base of our spine, but the serpent energy in a lot of ancient traditions is symbolic of transformation and of rebirth. And a Kundalini awakening can be likened to a transformative experience like a rebirth. And this energy that we're all born with, we all have it, lies asleep at the base of the spine. And it's often referred to as Shakti energy. And Shakti in Kundalini is feminine energy and very primal creative energy. So it's like a supercharged boost of energy that when you open to this energy, when it's awakened and has the potential to unblock what is known as the chakras, the energy centers, you can create a sense of a feeling of totality where the mind and the body and the spirit all start to interconnect. And you have a feeling of more wholeness, of more completeness, and a sense also of empowerment. I think that's one of the key benefits of Kundalini. It gives you a sense of inner confidence, a sense of empowerment, and a sense of being able to strive for excellence. And I wouldn't have written this book on Kundalini if it wasn't for my practice of Kundalini Yoga, without a doubt. And I certainly wouldn't have created a yoga studio in Sydney without my practice of Kundalini, done many, many other things. So it really gave me a new sense of purpose. It gave me a new sense of connectedness, and it inspired me creatively. And they're just some of the benefits for me. But also now, what's exciting is that medical science is now recognizing Kundalini Yoga as a tool to help people who are suffering from dementia, from Alzheimer's, from memory loss, from depression, from anxiety disorders. There's a Kundalini meditation that I mentioned in my book that is known as Kirtan Kriya. And the Alzheimer's Foundation in the States have now prescribed this meditation, Kirtan Kriya, 12 minutes a day, to help people who are suffering from memory loss, who are going through Alzheimer's, even carers of Alzheimer's patients, and people who are suffering from dementia. So if you want a meditation to do to help improve your memory and to keep yourself sharp, I recommend Kirtan Kriya for like 12 minutes a day. So that's exciting, the fact that medical science is catching up with this and these ancient teachings, which are around 5,000 years old. I mean, Kundalini is mentioned back in ancient scripts like 5,000 years ago. Some of the tantrikas, the masters of tantric practices, were talking about Kundalini back 5,000 years ago. And so going on about what it is and how we can integrate it. So it's made up of components. There are several components to Kundalini Yoga. And I just want to mention too, Kundalini Yoga, as taught by Yogi Bhajan, which is pretty much what my whole book is about, those particular teachings, they directly work with the Kundalini energy. So they help to channel this energy directly. And this Kundalini Yoga practice is made up of Kriyas, sets. And the components of those sets are asana, like posture, that you would find in some yoga practices, predominantly hatha, that you would recognize some of the postures, and movement and powerful breathing techniques. Pranayama, breath control, is a key component to raising Kundalini energy, as is mantra. So mantra means to release the mind. So mantra is, again, a Sanskrit word. And mantra and pranayama, I would say, are the two key components to Kundalini Yoga and to help raise this awareness of the Kundalini energy. So there's asana, posture, movement, pranayama, mantra, mudras, hand positions, and mental focus. A lot of the time in Kundalini Yoga practice, we close our eyes. There's definitely an inward component perspective. So instead of being distracted by what's happening externally, of comparing yourself and competing with others, you're actually going within and listening and becoming more connected internally. You know, today we live in such a externalized world. There's so much information, there's so much stimulus around us. So that opportunity to go within and be more reflective and more meditative and more contemplative, I think is what people are searching for more and more now. People are wanting to find that inner stillness, that inner peace, especially if we live in big cities like London. It's hard to find that connectedness sometimes, that inner quiet, that inner stillness. So those components that I mentioned, they make up what is known as Kriyas, sets. And there are literally thousands of sets within Kundalini Yoga and thousands of meditations. So you could spend a whole lifetime exploring this practice and you'd never actually experience every single Kriya and every single meditation. And as I mentioned before, they're quite prescriptive. So you can have an exercise, a meditation, or a Kriya that can work on every single chakra of the body. In Kundalini, we say there's 7 known chakras, energy centers. You can work on every single gland in the body. And Kundalini Yoga works a lot with the glandular system. That's a key benefit to strengthen and balance the glandular system. As well as the nervous system, we work a lot on strengthening the nerves, which is definitely needed now when we are facing this bombardment with technology. constantly, every day. So we need to find tools that help to strengthen the nervous system. So there are Kriyas that work on every single organ. So you can do a Kriya for your liver, you can do a Kriya for your gallbladder, a Kriya for your spleen. There are Kriyas for manifestation, meditations for manifestation, for prosperity, to ignite more creativity, to bring more emotional balance, to help break addiction kriyas. There are quite a few of those, because when Yogi Bhajan brought the teachings to the West in the 60s, there are a lot of people who were going through experimentation with drugs and addiction. And so there are kriyas that are very effective in helping people with addictions. And let's face it, the 21st century, who hasn't got some form of addiction, whether it's subtle or profound? We live in an addictive society now. People are addicted to their iPhones, they're addicted to technology, they're addicted to computers. So these kriyas, what makes them so effective for this modern world is that they're fast. So you could do an exercise with Kundalini. You could wake up and do a powerful breath of fire with your arms in a particular position. And you could feel a sense of well-being and harmony and peace within, say, 2 to 3 minutes, depending on how open you are to that energy, and depending also on how blocked you are. So this toolbox of kriyas, of sets and meditations, is a chance for you to explore, really, the whole being of you. You can work out where you're perhaps blocked emotionally, where you feel you need to open more, where you feel you need to shift something, step out of a job that perhaps, is no longer suiting you anymore, step out of a relationship that, isn't serving you anymore. So in that sense, it is a very interesting practice, because these components, the combination of them within these kriyas, really give you a mastery of self. And people often ask me, do you need a Kundalini teacher to start with your practice? I would definitely recommend that you find a good teacher. I think that is key, because I think with anything powerful, which Kundalini Yoga can be, it's important to find a good teacher and someone who can support and guide you and encourage you and set you on that path. But then, as I explain in my book, Everyday Kundalini, you can choose a meditation, for example, and begin a meditation daily, and then just observe the changes yourself, and how you're experiencing them, how they're benefiting you. And so I have set out 12 meditations in my book, at the end of my book. And these meditations I chose specifically to give kind of an overview, like a palette of things that we all go through sometimes. Challenges, stresses, imbalances, feeling blocked creatively. And so I kind of gave like a palette of different meditations that would make it more accessible for people in a busy modern day life. And then I speak a lot about what is Kundalini, and these key components like mantra and pranayama, and how they are very much instrumental in helping to awaken the Kundalini energy at the base of the spine. And I also talk a little bit about the chakras, because the chakra system is very much a part of Kundalini practice. And ancient yogis, they spent, thousands of years in caves exploring the chakra system. And the chakras, when we become more attuned to them, more sensitive to them, they can help us with emotions, with thoughts, with perceptions, with moods. You can work out where some chakras are more out of balance than others. And through a constant practice of Kundalini yoga, you can really help to bring these chakras back into balance. Kundalini isn't just about raising energy. No, it definitely is not just about that. And I think there are some misdemeanors about Kundalini and just raising the energy. I mean, it's about being aware of that energy and doing the practice in a safe and supported environment, and calmly and patiently setting yourself a practice, a daily practice preferably, and working with this energy in a very conscious way to benefit you in a very positive way. So not just raising that energy, but integrating it through your physical body, through your mental body, through your emotional body, and working with that energy in a very productive, conscious way. So I talk a little bit about the chakras and what they are, and pranayama and breath control and mantra, and yes, a little bit about the goddess Shakti and what she was symbolic of. And the book really was written with beginners in mind. However, I think it's also a book for people who have been practicing Kundalini yoga for a while. And I wrote it really with the intention of demystifying the practice, because I think sometimes Kundalini yoga can seem a little esoteric, a little mystical, and because of its ancientness, and also because of these components, in particular the mantra. Some people find that a little daunting, chanting mantra. So the book was really to demystify the teachings and to make it accessible to people from all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of professions. So it's very inclusive, you know. Yeah, how did I come to write it? That's a very interesting story. I then started to teach Kundalini a fair amount as I was singing, performing, and I really found that I had this very strong relationship to Kundalini, and I had always felt that I wanted to write a book. I felt that from quite a young age, and I think because of my experience with Kundalini, it inspired me to start drafting a book. And so I started to do that, and within my meditation practice of Kundalini, I started to envisage that somehow this book would get written and be published. So I did a draft of the book, and then for about 3 months I did a prosperity meditation from Kundalini, and I did that daily. And then I had an email arrive from a commissioning editor at Watkins, and they said, "We've heard that you're an experienced Kundalini teacher, and we feel that Kundalini is now becoming much more prominent as a yoga practice, and we would love you to write a book." So that's how the book came about. And that just goes to show you the power of the mind, of manifestation, and the power of intention, and the power of these meditations. That's how it all began with Watkins, and they've been incredibly supportive. They've really helped promote and support the book. And I think they see, as I do, that it's really growing exponentially, Kundalini yoga. You can literally find Kundalini yoga now in every single city in the world. And it's exciting because, yes, medical science is now backing it up, and also because people are having very profound shifts with Kundalini quite quickly. And, you know, I've taught people who have had all sorts of health conditions with Kundalini, people with spina bifida who have suddenly felt energy in their spine after not having experienced energy in their spine for, well, since ever. And also people who have been suffering from cancer, people who have transformed their lives with having RSI through practicing Kundalini yoga, people who have had hormonal conditions, imbalance in thyroid, or people who have had liver conditions, people who have had problems with communication, opening their throat chakra, people who have felt themselves blocked creatively, people who are kind of shut down energetically. So it really is encouraging, and I suppose that's why I still keep teaching it, because I see the benefits all the time, and not only within myself but people around me. And I think that that is what is so inspiring and so encouraging. And yeah, I encourage you all to have an experience of it. And now I'm just going to open the space for any questions that you might have about Kundalini, anything you want to share. I haven't really heard that directly what you're talking about. Definitely you can work with the energy of the lunar cycles for sure. And in Kundalini yoga, we do practices that are connected to the lunar, the moon cycles. And when you meditate around those kind of lunar cycles, astrological changes, planetary changes, there's definitely more of an impact on your meditation practice. There's more of a potency, so to speak. Does meditating around a moon cycle awaken Kundalini? No. But if you were to maybe be in a situation where it happened to be a moon cycle and you had a Kundalini awakening around a moon cycle, then that's just your blessed experience.
So the idea of that fluid being secreted in the brain every month, not part of
Definitely there are secretions within the brain. The yogis talked a lot about two particular glands, the pituitary gland and the pineal gland.
Yeah.
And they worked a lot with these glands, and actually a lot of people still don't know exactly what effect the pineal gland secreting has on the rest of the body. However, the pituitary gland is like the master gland. It's located just behind the third eye, and that gland kind of governs the rest of the hormones. So it's a very important gland, and we focus a lot at the third eye in Kundalini yoga practice to help stimulate and balance that gland. The pineal gland, when it's secreted, and the Kundalini process, the awakening of Kundalini, has an impact on those two glands. When it secretes, it has the potential for all the cells in the body to kind of come together in harmony, in peace. So it gives you this elevated sense of awareness, and the brain then starts to rebalance. So the serum in the brain starts to rebalance. So you start to feel less busy in the mind and more peaceful, more at peace.
So is that more entities provided you do with meditation?
Yeah, so there are two Vayas, we call them airs in Kundalini, Prana and Apana. And those two Vayas, those two airs, there's more than two, but they're the predominant ones. They work together to create a harmony. And when you awaken Kundalini, those two Vayas start to create a harmony in the Sushumna, which is the central nerve column in the spine. So the central nerve column in the spine is called the Sushumna, and on each side there are two other nerve channels, nadis we call them, energy channels, Ida, Pingala. And those two nerve channels they spiral around the Sushumna, the central nerve. So the Sushumna is where the Kundalini rises through, and that is definitely key to the practice. When it rises, it does travel up to the pineal, and then it comes down, and prana and apana meet at the solar plexus. They meet at that area, and that helps to awaken the Kundalini. Lots of classes in London. There are 2 teachers sitting right here. Oh, there are 3 teachers sitting right here. And I'm sure they'll be happy to give you their details of their classes. I teach at Tri Yoga Camden. I also teach at a place called Zen Wellness in Marylebone. And so you'd be welcome to come to a class and experience it for yourself. So when you're sitting at an office desk all day, you stand, do you? Okay. Well, it still has an impact on your spine and on your pelvis as well. So we work a lot with the energy in the spine. So we have these exercises called Spinal Flexors, and you could take 1 to 2 minutes and go and find yourself a chair, or you could sit on the ground. I don't know if that's possible in your work environment, but you could do some of these spinal exercises and combine it with breath. So the breath, as I said before, is a key component, and that can just lift your energy levels and lift your spirits to a different level if you're sitting at a desk or standing as you are all day, every day. I would say those exercises, the spinal flexors and breathing techniques, pranayama, there's one called breath of fire, which is a great substitute for coffee drinkers. So if you're one of those people that just, is a little addicted to coffee, and let's face it, in the work environment, everyone, it's the social culture, isn't it? Everyone reaches for a cup of coffee. So what you can do is a breath of fire, which is a dynamic inhale, exhale through the nostrils. And that rapid breath really starts to ignite the glandular system. And it starts to clear blocks in the mind and increase oxygen in the blood. So within 2 to 3 minutes, you'll start to feel uplifted. So if you're feeling a bit sluggish, if you're feeling a bit slow, that breath of fire is a really great one to practice in a work environment. And you can do it without, people noticing, the fact that you've chosen to stand when you could be sitting, and, when you sit, you compress the spine, the pelvis, can become misaligned if you don't have the right chair, and, your energy can really slump if you don't find ways to kind of pick yourself up, especially around 3, 4 in the afternoon. Yeah. So yeah, you can do breathing exercises and spinal exercises, and there are those that are mentioned. Those are mentioned in the book as well. So it lasted for a short time.
Yeah.
But you felt a different level of energy in your spine.
Yeah, it felt like a stream.
That's a nice way of describing it. Yeah. So when you do the practice of Kundalini yoga, you definitely become more sensitive to energy. You become more conscious of prana, life force, and of these chakras, these energies within the body. So what you may have experienced was an awakening of some Kundalini energy. Or it could have just been a release in your spine of a block, and therefore the river was flowing more freely. I know some people have really busy lives, and I would encourage you to do 20 minutes if you could. I think that I often get asked by people who, are juggling a lot, how can I make this part of my everyday life? And so I think it's important to find a practice for you that is doable, rather than setting yourself a ridiculous task of doing an hour's practice, knowing that you're not going to fulfill that every day. So 20 minutes of tuning in, doing some breath work, getting the spine moving, and maybe doing a meditation. So, and that's quite doable within 20 minutes. And yeah, observing those changes and how, because really that's what it's about. You need to see how it's benefiting your life. You need to observe how it's benefiting your life. And inevitably it will. If Mantra I referred to was Guru Dharam. So he was my first Kundalini yoga teacher. And then I've come across lots of other teachers like Guru Mork, and I've done various workshops with her. And then my second teacher, who was had a very pivotal role in, I think, my experience. Yeah, it's a good question. Some people can activate Kundalini without doing Kundalini yoga, for sure. You know, you could be climbing up a mountain and you could activate Kundalini. So it all depends what's going on within you at the time. If perhaps you're very, very blocked and perhaps fearful, and you doubt Kundalini, you're not so receptive to it. And if your history could be perhaps with some trauma or some addiction, yes, Kundalini could somehow become stuck, blocked. But there are definitely ways to release it so it doesn't become stuck. And a good teacher would be able to show you those ways of getting the energy circulating in a balanced, harmonious way. Another good question, I mean, you hear this a lot now with Kundalini, is it dangerous? I mean, it's your energy. Why should that be dangerous? You know, that's what it is. It's you're working with your own energy. These teachings, don't forget, were kept secret. They were only passed down from like teacher to student in Tibet and India. And Yogi Bhajan, who brought them to the States in the 60s, he was quite maverick, and I think he foresaw that we would need them. And he was totally right. I mean, they're great for this time we're living in. And a lot of people ask that question, is it dangerous? Well, it's like anything that's powerful. If it's abused, it's dangerous. You know, it has the potential to be dangerous. I mean, would you practice Kundalini yoga on drugs? No. Would you practice Kundalini yoga if you're going through severe trauma? Well, you'd have to be really kind of cautious that you have a teacher who knows what they're doing to help support you and guide you through. Is it good for trauma? Yes. Is it good for addiction? Yes. But it's important, again, to find a good teacher and someone who can guide you in the practice in a safe and, you know, conscious way with patience and, you know, to put the time in. Yeah. So is it dangerous? No, it's not dangerous. But if you abuse it, yes, it can potentially have negative. I think Kundalini yoga is very effective with emotions. And we all have emotions. We need emotions as social creatures, human creatures, you know. It's how we relate to those emotions. Because the emotions can get trapped in the subconscious mind, and then they become commotional. They can really unhinge you. And then you go into this whole kind of cycle of negativity and this whole cycle of a self-destructive pattern, self-sabotage. So Kundalini yoga helps you to become more conscious of those emotions, whatever they are. If it's, you know, fear, anger, despair, trauma, whatever it is, and you can transmute those emotions into something more positive. So you can use that energy in a very conscious and effective way to give more benefit to your life rather than letting those emotions destroy you. Yeah. And breath, the breath work and the mantra are key components to that. They really help to transmute the emotions and to give you a sense of, what your relationship is to emotion. And, you know, then with a regular practice, you catch yourself sometimes, you know, fuming with anger, for example, because you've got a parking ticket or whatever, I don't know. instead of reacting to those emotions, you become more conscious of the breath and how you can transmute that emotion into something more powerful, because anger is a powerful emotion and you can really channel it in a very positive, proactive way. No. Thanks for your feedback. I teach a Tri Yoga too, and Tri Yoga are renowned for bringing as many people into the class as possible. It's also up to the teacher as well. The teacher can put a quota on how many numbers, how many people are allowed to come to class. And Tri Yoga do usually have, I don't know about other studios, but they do usually have usually have a cap.
Yeah, I'm not just saying Tri Yoga, but other yoga places as well. They're just as bad.
Yeah, there's another way of looking at that. Just so when you're in that experience again, is that we're triggered by things all the time, yeah? And we can be triggered by things all the time, and space definitely, because we live in an overcrowded city. And when we go to a Kundalini yoga class, yes, it is lovely to have, a nice space around you. Yeah, sure.
Surrounded by people, you just want a bit of space.
But just when you're there next at an overcrowded class, take some time to go inward and create the space within you, yeah? Even though you might be squashed like a sardine with like someone behind you, in front of you, to the side, just instead of reacting to the spatial issue and the physical closeness of the people around you, maybe go within. And we do have...
But it's pretty uncomfortable. I find it very uncomfortable and disturbing. And because I'm so anxious, I don't enjoy the class.
Yeah, well, maybe find a class then where there's less people.
Yeah,
I mean, they exist,
yeah,
where there's
I
less
think
people.
As teachers, they should take responsibility for health and safety and all kinds of issues.
Yeah.
So you easily kick someone in the face or whatever,
Bring that up with the person who manages the studio, for sure. If you feel really strongly about it, which I can tell you do, bring it up with the studio manager and say...
One person can't change anything, you know what I mean? Sometimes
I think they can. I mean, the power of voice is...
You need a group of people to get together, then things will change.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
And maybe vent that with your other fellow students, and see if they feel the same way. And I mean, I've heard that kind of feedback from not just you, but other people as well. And the teacher should also set the space up so there is enough room for everyone, so they can readjust mats, and so there's more space. So maybe feed that back to the studio manager, but also to the teacher.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
Is it more powerful?
We have what is known as Sadhana, which is a spiritual practice as part of Kundalini Yoga, which is a 2.5 hour practice. And you do this 2.5 hour practice when you go through teacher training. And it's really up to you whether you can maintain a 2.5 hour practice in a busy life. It's usually done before the sun rises, and it involves a Kriya, a set, and mantra, chanting mantras. So that is powerful for yourself. That's it. Sadhana is definitely a key component, a cornerstone to staying connected with the Kundalini and really expanding your awareness and your experience of Kundalini. But nothing substitutes like a group practice. When you're in a group, and it may not just be Kundalini, when you're, I don't know if you've experienced it, when you're in a group chanting together, meditating together, that collective energy has such a profound effect on everyone's psyche. I don't know if you know the guy who studied water, a Japanese guy, Osumo. He gathered people in different places. For example, there was a river, a dam in Russia that was completely polluted. And there was a whole group of them, like 50, and they meditated around this dam. And over several days, this dam, suddenly the water quality of it changed. He took photos of the crystals of the water, and the molecular structure of the water crystals changed because of that collective energy. And so collective energy is powerful. It's transformative. And so who is the woman who spoke about the space? when you gather people together collectively and you express something, it has a very powerful effect. And we all have the capacity to change things in the world. Never think that, one voice isn't enough, because we do have the power. So yes, for sure, it's more powerful. But it's also very good to increase your own self-awareness through your own practice.
One more question about
Yes.
the dementia, Alzheimer's.
Yes.
Kirtan?
Kirtan, Kirtan, Kirtan Kriya. Yeah.
Obviously, people who've got dementia, Alzheimer's, they're actually quite difficult to teach. But you still think it's a possibility to show them how to exercise. Is it quite difficult? Is it long?
It's not too difficult. I mean, it's just literally using a mudra. This is repeated again and again and again, which stimulates the reflexes up to the hypothalamus, the brain. And it uses a mantra. And the mantra is 4 syllables, sa, ta, nama, which is in conjunction with the mudra, sa, ta, na, ma. And you do it in 3 different voices. I mean, you could just do one voice, in fact. It would still have an effect. It's in my book. You'll see it in the back of the book. And I mean, it's really also good to do if you feel you're suffering, you're kind of on the verge of suffering from dementia or memory loss, or it's also a great meditation, that one, for bringing more emotional balance and to help with anxiety and depression. You could definitely give it to someone who was, depending on how far they were gone. Do you know of someone who has Alzheimer's? Yes. I mean, my grandmother suffered from Alzheimer's for a long, long time, and that's what's so cruel about that disease, is that they can go on for a long, long time, and there are stages with it, as you probably know. Unfortunately, I didn't know about Kundalini when she was alive, but I would have given her that meditation. And a friend of mine has actually given it to her mother, who also suffered from Alzheimer's.
Have you heard positive stories?
Well, I mean, the Alzheimer's Foundation in the States are using it. They prescribe it to their patients. So they've done MRI scans on the brain and the effects of that meditation. And they say it's the mantra with the mudra that basically changes the chemistry of the brain.
Good to know.
Yeah. So it affects, when you meditate, it particularly affects the prefrontal cortex of the brain. And when people meditate a lot, when they do MRI scans on that prefrontal cortex, it's a lot calmer. It's a lot more harmonious. So that's what that meditation works on. It kind of rebalances the brain. Yeah, so give it a try, for sure. Yeah.